In the cool atmosphere of the morning at the military training base, the smell of wet earth mixed with the air full of discipline. The soldiers marched upright, looking straight ahead with regular exhaled breaths. Among them, there is one figure who from the beginning has stolen the attention of not only fellow trainees, but also superiors who rarely pay special attention to one soldier, Eunwoo, an actor and idol who is now known as a dedicated soldier. That day, shocking news began to circulate by word of mouth among the members of his unit. "Do you hear?" The lieutenant praised him directly in front of the ranks. The sentence spread quickly like a fire in a dry meadow. Eunwoo never considered himself special in the military. When he first entered, he knew that many judged his presence only as a celebrity looking for a good image. But behind the calmness of his face, which always seemed orderly and gentle, was a strong determination to show who he really was. A man who worked hard, respected orders, and did not seek preferential treatment. A few weeks after he officially joined, a change in the attitude of the seniors began to be seen. From those who initially kept their distance and hesitated to talk, now they often greet him first. "He always comes earlier than others," said a fellow soldier. "Even before the morning apple bell rings, he is already on the field, checking the shoelaces and cleaning the training area. What is surprising is not only his discipline, but also the way he treats those around him." Eunwoo never discriminated against anyone. He helped new soldiers who were struggling with their equipment, and even took part in cleaning the bathroom without being asked. His humble attitude made some initially skeptical superiors begin to notice him secretly. But the peak of that attention came during high-level physical training under the supervision of Lieutenant Kong, a stern figure known for rarely smiling. In the midst of heavy training that tested the endurance and mental strength of each soldier, many began to burn out. But Eunwoo kept running, holding his breath, looking straight ahead, even though sweat was dripping down his face. Lieutenant Kong briefly looked at the watch. Seeing one by one the soldiers stopped. But only one still ran endlessly, as if fighting against himself. When the long whistle sounded signaling the end of the exercise, Eunwoo's body trembled, his knees barely supporting the body. But before falling, he straightened up and gave a perfect salute to his superiors. Lieutenant Kong looked at him intently, then said, "Soldier Cha, you just showed me the true meaning of resilience." The noise made the whole field silent. From that day on, Eunwoo's name became the talk of the town, not only because of his good looks, which remained prominent even in military uniform, but because of his unshakable spirit. But the attention the boss gets is not just an ordinary compliment. 2 days later, Lieutenant Kong summoned Eunwoo personally to the command room. The few soldiers who saw him enter began to speculate. "Will he be given a special assignment?" whispered one of them. The door closed tightly, and the conversation inside lasted longer than usual. When Eunwoo finally came out, his face looked serious. But in his eyes there was something different, a mixture of pride and great responsibility. He had just been given orders to become a temporary assistant coach, a position rarely given to new recruits. The decision came as a surprise to many, including seniors. No one expected that a celebrity would be trusted to help train her colleagues. "That means the lieutenant really recognized his ability," said one of the senior soldiers in a tone of amazement. But for Eunwoo, the post was not something to be proud of. He knew every responsibility in the military came with great risks. That night, in a quiet dormitory, he sat by himself on the edge of the bed, looking at his family photo that he kept in his uniform pocket. "I can't let them down," he muttered softly. The following days, the walk got heavier and heavier. As an assistant coach, Eunwoo had to make sure all the training went according to schedule. He became a respected figure, but also often became the target of complaints from colleagues. Some consider him too disciplined, others complain that he is too hard on himself. But behind it all, Eunwoo set a great example. He never ruled without working. Whenever there is activity, he is always at the forefront. One day, during a weapons training session, a new soldier accidentally drops his weapon. In a tense atmosphere, the sound of falling metal made all heads turn. Lieutenant Kong stared intently, the atmosphere becoming tense. But before a stern rebuke came out, Eunwoo came forward and said, Permission, sir. It's not because of negligence, but because of the slippery ground position. He covered up the mistakes of his colleagues, even though he knew that his words could provoke a risk for himself. Lieutenant Kong paused for a moment, looked at Eunwoo deeply, then said, "Fine, but make sure it doesn't happen again." After the incident, his colleagues looked at Eunwoo with different eyes, full of respect and gratitude. But the attention of superiors and fellow soldiers did not always bring comfort. There was a huge pressure that Eunwoo was beginning to feel. He feels that he must always be perfect, must always be strong, because many eyes are now on him. One night, after the night practice was over and all the soldiers were asleep, Eunwoo went out into the backyard, staring at the dark sky filled with stars. He took a deep breath, then closed his eyes. In the silence, a quiet voice sounded, "Eunwoo, get some rest." It was the voice of the senior sergeant who happened to be passing by. Eunwoo smiled. "I just want to make sure everything is safe, sir." "You've done more than enough," replied the sergeant. That simple moment became one of the most touching moments of his enlistment. A sincere confession without formalities. A few weeks later, came another shocking news. The chief of the training division, a high-ranking officer who rarely went down directly, came to monitor the progress of the unit. Carries a list of the names of the best-performing warriors. When the evaluation ceremony was held, all the soldiers stood upright in the hot sun. One by one, the names were called out, until finally a loud voice was heard, "Warrior Cha Eunwoo." The voice echoed, making the entire line spontaneously turn its head. Eunwoo stepped forward with a firm step, saluting with a perfect gesture. The officer looked at him for a long time before speaking. "I heard a lot about you, about your discipline, your sincerity, and the way you maintain team spirit." Then, in a firm voice, he added, "You are the example that all the young soldiers here should follow." Small cheers were heard from behind the ranks, but were soon suppressed by Lieutenant Kang's piercing gaze. Even so, proud smiles could not be hidden from the faces of some soldiers. Eunwoo himself looked speechless, only lowered his head and gave a quiet thank you. That moment became a turning point in his military journey. He is now no longer just an idle serving in the military, but a true soldier who is respected for his dedication and integrity. Many media outlets began to hear about his achievements, although not all of them were officially reported. Some members of the military staff even called him an exemplary soldier. But Eunwoo himself remains humble. He declined the interview and wrote one simple sentence in his diary. "I came as Cha Eunwoo. I want to go home as someone better." Days go by and the seasons change. The training got harder, but the spirit never faded. Even when his body is tired, he always smiles when greeting his colleagues. Lieutenant Kong, once known to be tough and unapproachable, now often praises Eunwoo at the front of the line. "If all the soldiers had a spirit like his," he said one morning, "this army would be stronger than ever." Those words made many people's chests tremble, including Eunwoo, who was standing in the front row. He looked straight ahead, but his heart trembled. He never sought praise, but when he heard the confession, there was a warm feeling that was difficult to explain. But this story does not stop at praise alone. The attention from the superiors earned Eunwoo a new responsibility: to be the unit's representative at the annual honor event at headquarters. He had to lead a small team to demonstrate physical training and discipline before the ranks of commanders. The task was a great honor as well as a severe test. The days leading up to the event, he trained tirelessly. Even when his teammates were already resting, he continued to train alone on the field. The day of the show arrived. Thousands of eyes stared at the huge field. Eunwoo stood in the front row, body straightened, face full of concentration. When the cue starts, the entire team moves in unison, showing near-perfect coordination. Not a single mistake. As the final gesture was made and they saluted, applause echoed throughout the area. The commanders stood paying their respects, and one of them even walked up to Eunwoo, patting him on the shoulder saying, "Incredible!